They tried to silence him. They erased his name. But he rebuilt from nothing. He fought every algorithm. They tried again and failed. Now he's back, stronger. From blackout to spotlight, he's at the White House, at the top of his game. Franchi lives.
You are about to enter another dimension, the dimension of truth, unfiltered and uncensored. Welcome to the Raw Feed with Gary Franchi.
Welcome to the Raw Feed. I'm Gary Franchi, coming to you live from the heart of America. Unfiltered truth to millions on YouTube. Hit those donation links below. Every contribution powers our gear. Every contribution keeps the party going. Help me help you. Hit those donation links. YouTube channel memberships. Special acknowledgement in the fellowship. Your super chats keep me standing. Your rumble rants fuel every round.
Say hello to super chats.
Spread the intel. Every repost extends our reach.
Super chats fuel this spectacle. Your rumble rants give me strength.
24/7 members-only community, behind-the-scenes discussions.
Connect with fellow patriots.
My mama always said, life is like sharing the truth. Text this stream to your friends. What if I told you the app is real? Download the Next News Network app. Android users, take the Google Play path. iPhone users, App Store awaits.
The deep state's worst nightmare is becoming reality faster than they ever imagined possible. I'm Gary Franchi, and this is the Raw Feed. Every February 3rd reminds us why principled leadership matters. On this day in 1870, the 15th Amendment was ratified, guaranteeing voting rights regardless of race or color. Today, we're witnessing another historic battle for election integrity as Trump fights to secure every American's sacred right to have their legal vote counted and protected from fraud. Speaking of battles, the Clinton crime family finally ran out of places to hide. After decades of dodging accountability, Bill and Hillary just agreed to testify before Congress in the Epstein investigation, but only after lawmakers threatened them with contempt charges. Think about that for a moment. A former president and Secretary of State had to be legally threatened before agreeing to tell the truth under oath. What exactly are they so desperate to keep hidden? The American people deserve answers about their connections to one of the most notorious criminals in modern history, and we're finally going to get them. Meanwhile, President Trump is doing what he does best, keeping America safe, while his predecessor played politics. Just days into February, our military conducted precision strikes against ISIS operatives in Somalia. I wonder why he picked Somalia. Apparently, he eliminated 14 terrorists without a single civilian casualty. This is what competent leadership looks like. No endless wars, no nation-building nonsense, just surgical removal of threats to American security. The data tells the story. We're systematically dismantling terrorist networks that flourished under previous administrations that have mysterious ties to one of the most notorious congresswomen on the Hill. But most fascinating development might be happening just 90 miles from Florida. Trump is reportedly now in talks with Cuban leadership as that communist hellhole faces complete economic collapse. With only days of oil reserves remaining, the Cuban regime is finally learning what happens when you bet everything on failed socialist policies. But here's what makes this brilliant. Trump isn't just thinking about Cuba. He's thinking about kicking China, Russia, and Iran out of our hemisphere permanently. No more foreign spy bases in our backyard. No more communist outposts threatening American families. The establishment's also panicking about Trump's election security agenda. The Save America Act is gaining momentum, and even Senate Democrats know they can't defend their opposition to basic voter identification requirements. When 76% of black Americans support voter ID, you know the progressive narrative is completely collapsed. Tulsi Gabbard, she's leading a whole-of-government effort to restore integrity to our elections, and the results are already showing. Democrats spent years claiming that voter ID was somehow discriminatory. But Americans of every background recognize common sense when they see it. Perhaps most importantly, for America's economic future, Trump just nominated Kevin Warsh as Federal Reserve Chairman, the first genuinely pro-Bitcoin Fed chair in history. Now, it's not just about cryptocurrency. This is about breaking the stranglehold that corrupt central bankers have held over American families for generations. While Powell turned monetary policy into a political weapon, Warsh represents a return to sound economic principles and technological innovation. Every single one of these stories connects to the same theme. The America First movement isn't just winning elections anymore. We're fundamentally restructuring how this country operates. From foreign policy to monetary policy, from election integrity to terrorist elimination, Trump is systematically dismantling the failed systems that have held America back for decades. You see, the deep state knows their time is running out. They're watching their carefully constructed house of cards collapse in real time. Clinton corruption exposed, terrorist networks eliminated, communist regimes crumbling, election fraud mechanisms destroyed, central banking monopolies challenged. This is what draining the swamp actually looks like when you have the will to do it. So tonight we're going to dive into each of these developing stories. The evidence is overwhelming, the momentum unstoppable, and the American people are finally getting the government they voted for. The Raw Feed starts now because the truth won't report itself. Let's welcome you to the show. Who's here? Pothead Kenny, Paul Gray. We've also got James Fay, Karen Lynn, Sparky's Run. Who else is here? Let's scroll up in the chat room and see who else has joined us today. Prophecy News Channel. I love prophecy. I am definitely a student of prophecy. Amen. Damon Gore is here. Cindy. Scrolling up here. Who else is here? Jose Alberto is here. Tracy Hicks is in the house. Everybody is filing in. Pippin172. Make sure you guys hit that share. Dale is here as well. Make sure you hit the share on the video player underneath. And if you're watching on X, go ahead and share this to your followers. Also, if you're watching on Facebook, make sure you share this with your friends and family. And as always, copy the link and text it to somebody who needs to hear this message, because that's the only way we can bypass the suppression that is taking place on these social networks. So, Brian, without further ado, let's get at it. Waiting for the page to load, and we'll begin. Okay, almost there, almost there. There we go. After years of dodging, deflecting, and hiding behind high-powered lawyers, Bill and Hillary Clinton just blinked hard. The former president and his wife have agreed to testify before Congress about their ties to Jeffrey Epstein, but only after facing the very real threat of being held in contempt. So what are they so afraid of? What secrets have they been protecting, and why now? You see, this is not just another political theater moment. This is personal for millions of Americans who've watched the establishment protect itself for decades. For parents, this represents accountability for those connected to one of the most horrific trafficking networks in modern history. Socially, we're about to witness whether our justice system applies equally to political elites or if there's still a two-tiered system of justice. Politically, this could reshape everything we thought we knew about the Democrat establishment. You see, Hillary Clinton, who spent years positioning herself as a champion of women, now has to answer under oath about her relationship with a convicted sex trafficker. The implications reach far beyond the Clintons. This sets the precedent for whether Congress can actually compel former presidents to testify. And speaking of accountability and America's critical infrastructure, there is another national security story that you do need to know about. Yes, breaking news on January 5th. This flew totally under the radar. It happened this year, right after the new year. The U.S. Department of Energy announced $2.7 billion in contracts to restore domestic uranium enrichment capabilities. Now, this is not just government spending. It's a declaration of intent. America needs uranium, domestic uranium, and it needs it right now. The U.S., if you didn't know, consumes over 50 million pounds of uranium annually, yet produces less than 5% domestically. We're dangerously dependent on foreign sources, including from hostile nations. This creates massive vulnerabilities in our energy grid and our national defense systems. But here's what the mainstream media will not tell you. While the government scrambles to rebuild our uranium infrastructure, smart Americans are already positioning themselves in this critical market. Companies like Atomic Minerals, they are at the forefront of domestic uranium production, working to restore American energy independence. When national security meets market opportunity, early movers profit. The uranium shortage isn't coming. It's already here. That's the kind of strategic thinking America needs. Energy independence that strengthens our negotiating position with corrupt foreign actors. Take a look at the briefing that has been prepared just for you. It is linked down below. But here's what makes the Clinton testimony even more explosive. We're talking about the timing. Why are they agreeing now? Well, sources close to the investigation suggest House Republicans have obtained new evidence that could make contempt charges stick. We're talking about flight logs, witness testimonies, financial records that paint a disturbing picture. This isn't the Clinton machine at full strength anymore. This is desperation. This just in, Hillary and Bill have now agreed to testify in the House Epstein investigation. According to the New York Times, this comes 2 days prior to a vote in the House to hold them in criminal contempt for ignoring the subpoena. Here is James Comer.
Well, here we are again. I don't think it's any secret. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton joined her husband in defying a bipartisan lawful congressional subpoena to show up today. I think what's most disappointing to the Oversight Committee is the fact that we have, in good faith, negotiated with the Clintons' attorneys for 5 months. Throughout the past 5 months, they've implied to us they were trying to make a date work. In fact, the last date we had, they notified us 3 days beforehand, said that they would love to come, but they have a funeral to attend. And we have bent over backwards to try to schedule the Clinton. No, I'm still talking. I'm still talking. Go ahead. Hey, get him out of here. You're not even a reporter. Get out of here. So here's the situation. We're going to hold both Clintons in criminal contempt of Congress. We believe that because this subpoena was issued in a bipartisan fashion, the Democrats acted the day that the subpoenas were voted on in the subcommittee like they wanted the Clintons to come, because they at that time, if you go back, they were wanting me to subpoena the estate, which I did. We subpoenaed the estate and got all the.
The bottom line here is they're celebrating the pressure campaign. Let's hear it directly from the committee chair, James Comer. Once it became clear that the House of Representatives would hold them in contempt, the Clintons completely caved and will appear for transcribed, filmed depositions this month. Former President Bill Clinton will appear for the deposition on February 27th, 2026. Comer's victory lap sets up the Republican narrative perfectly, but other GOP members are making this personal. Watch now how they're weaponizing Hillary's own words against her. Yes, Representative Pat Fallon. Remember, Hillary Clinton claimed no one's above the law. Clearly, neither she nor Bill actually believes that, seeing as neither complied with their subpoenas to come before GOP House oversight. Let's hold them accountable. And then he posted this.
Epstein was a rapist, pedophile, sex trafficker. In street parlance, he was a scumbag, lowlife, and slimeball. And some of the things that I've read in these files, he was evil incarnate. He's also dead. I didn't even know who he was until he wasn't. So why are we here talking about a dead guy? Because he was associated with powerful people, some of which are highly likely to have participated with him in some of the worst kind of criminal activity. And if they did, they should pay. They should face justice, whether they're rich or poor, famous or anonymous, mighty or meek. So is that what we're doing today? Are we pursuing justice and transparency? Because transparency makes an easier and shorter path to the truth. We should be pursuing the truth. But some on this committee and in this Congress are pursuing fame and campaign fortune, and exploiting this issue, not in the pursuit of justice, but in the pursuit of raising hundreds of thousands of dollars using a false premise as a battering ram.
Fallon's calling out the Clinton hypocrisy, but another Republican is about to make it even more direct with a brutal social media call out. Here's another one. Congressman William Timmons. This you, Hillary Clinton? In the United States of America, no one is above the law. After delaying lawful subpoenas, Bill and Hillary are trying to dodge contempt by requesting special treatment. The Clintons are not above the law, and this is the response initially by GOP oversight to their latest demands. The simple "this you" hits hard, but now we're getting reports that health issues might be playing a role in the Clintons' sudden cooperation. Health issues, right? Breaking news, Bill and Hillary Clinton's health declines days before the full House vote to hold them in contempt for defying their subpoenas to testify. The House is seeking to hold Hillary in contempt after she failed to appear.
You also in the House have taken a step closer to referring the Clintons, Bill and Hillary, for criminal charges. Why?
Well, they failed to comply with a lawful subpoena, and a majority of Democrats on the House Oversight Committee agreed with all the Republicans that they are not above the law and they should be held in contempt of Congress. We'll be voting on that for the full House next week, and I expect every Republican and a bunch of Democrats to vote for that.
First Bill, now Hillary Clinton. Heart attack fear and blood clots are spelling the end for the former First Lady. That is the headline. Daniel Gura, the stress of repeated questioning in Hillary and Bill Clinton's friendship with Epstein, coupled with constant threats of legal rebuttal, it's quite literally killing the frail former First Lady. RadarOnline.com can reveal. The Clintons have come under attack for the refusal to testify about the relationship leading to calls for charges of contempt of Congress. Oh, how convenient, right? Yeah, that's where we're at. And continuing right along here, I must have hit the wrong button. We'll get that rolling for you in a second here as it's loading. Come on. There we go. All right. And here we have the health concerns are swirling, but the official GOP account is declaring total victory in the high-stakes standoff. Clintons cave and agree to appear for depositions on February 26th and the 27th. Comer said that once it became clear we would hold them in contempt, the Clintons completely caved and will appear for transcribed film depositions. Now we know they're testifying. Let's examine why the Epstein investigation has Republicans fired up about Bill Clinton specifically. True Street Media writes, meet Bill Clinton, former president of the United States. He said he was on Epstein's plane only 4 times, yet flight logs show he was on Epstein Island 26 times. He's heavily in the new Epstein files. Here he is getting a massage from an Epstein victim and accuser. Oh, yes, we've seen this picture before. The damaging photos are only the beginning. More evidence keeps surfacing that contradicts Clinton's previous statements. Hustle bitch writes, Bill Clinton said the evidence is clear, and now a new Epstein file jacuzzi photo emerges. New released image from the Epstein file show Bill Clinton in a private pool jacuzzi setting with Ghislaine Maxwell, a photo that had never been publicly seen before. Yeah, here's the picture. We've shown this to you. But this video, I think, is the one that really speaks volumes to me as you watch Bill Clinton's face when he's confronted directly. This was taken years ago. I forget who shot this, but it was a remarkable moment. Check it out.
Any comments on the alleged allegations of your connection with Jeffrey Epstein? No.
Oh, look at that. Oh, man. Look at that. You know what? Like, just watching that. I mean, just look at his face. Watch his face. Look at him. Jeffrey Epstein. Look at that sly look. He's like, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I know what I was doing on that island. I know what I was doing. I know exactly what I was doing. And it wasn't just hanging out in a hot tub. No, no, no. With the evidence piling up, Republicans are making it clear it's about accountability at the highest levels. No one's above the law, not even the Clintons. Accountability is coming. The news is spreading fast across conservative media, but not everyone is buying that this will lead to real answers. 1420, the answer, the Clintons have agreed. Salem News Channel. Let's see what they're saying over there. Former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State have agreed to testify. That's according to the attorneys. The pair's legal team indicated they would appear for depositions on dates mutually agreed with House Oversight staff. Comer, the Republican chair of the committee leading the probe, said no final agreement has been reached and that he's continuing to advance criminal contempt charges against both Clintons for previously defying the subpoena. The move marks a significant step in the investigation into Epstein, whose conviction and subsequent death drew national attention and scrutiny of his contacts with powerful figures. The skepticism is real. Some see this as political theater rather than genuine accountability. Glass Cannon writes, Clintons agree to testify. Oh, good. More theatrics for the unwashed masses. Yes, a bit of cynicism, and I don't blame them. Even brief reactions show the story has serious legs, and people are paying attention. Savage Clintons agree to testify. Mainstream media covering it as well, highlighting the Clinton denials that will likely be tested under oath. Oh, I can't wait to see. Plead the fifth, plead the fifth, plead the fifth. This is going to be wild. It's going to be wild. But it appears, I think it's going to be a closed-door deposition filmed. We're not going to be able to see that video probably for quite some time. The Clintons will avoid a potential contempt charge by testifying to to Congress over the relationship with Epstein. Hillary says she never met him. Bill says he severed any links with him years ago.
The Clintons have capitulated. That's how they're framing it here on Capitol Hill. For months, Bill and Hillary Clinton had refused to testify before the congressional committee investigating Jeffrey Epstein. They said subpoenas issued by the Republican chair of that committee, James Comer, were invalid and not legally enforceable. The former president and former Secretary of State accused him of targeting them for opposing Donald Trump and vowed to fight this. But things changed when some Democrats on the panel joined Republicans in a vote recommending that they be charged with criminal contempt. If the Justice Department chose to prosecute them, they faced up to a year in jail and fines of up to $100,000. President Clinton had offered to sit for a 4-hour transcribed interview. Mrs. Clinton had offered to make a sworn declaration instead of testifying. But the chairman of the committee described that as a desire for special treatment and an affront to the American people's desire for transparency. Bill Clinton will be the first former president to appear before Congress since Gerald Ford did so way back in 1983. When President Trump was subpoenaed by the committee investigating the January 6th raid on the Capitol, he sued the panel and they backed down. Bill Clinton was acquainted with Jeffrey Epstein, but has said he never visited his private island and ended contact with him 2 decades ago. Hillary Clinton says she never met or spoke to Jeffrey Epstein.
Never went to the island. No, sure. The Epstein files, a major development getting global attention, and the Clinton team is already pushing back hard against the investigation. Clinton's agreed to testify before House Committee. Bill and Hillary will appear before the House Committee. Their aide confirmed the statement has had some bite. They negotiated in good faith. You did not. Of course, Bill Clinton hanging out with Jeffrey there at the White House. Political observers know this is the opening act. These depositions could be explosive television when they are eventually aired. Clinton agrees to testify. The show is just getting started.
President Bill Clinton and his wife, Hillary, have reportedly agreed to testify before a House committee looking into the case of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The Clintons had initially fought appearing before the House panel. Committee chair and Republican James Comer of Kentucky then issued subpoenas to the Clintons and threatened to hold them in contempt of Congress. A representative tonight said that the Clintons had accepted the terms laid out by Comer, but there are still details to be worked out.
They've accepted the terms. Major networks are preparing wall-to-wall coverage because this is unprecedented in American politics. One American News, House GOP moves to pass a funding bill. President Trump hosts Colombia president. The Clintons agree to testify on the Epstein files and the alleged assassin of Charlie Kirk back in court.
Today on One America News, House Republican leaders are set to vote to pass a government funding package. Plus, President Trump is hosting the president of Colombia at the White House. And the Clintons finally agreed to testify on their ties to late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. And Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin will be back in a Utah court. We'll have all the details on those stories and more today on
The historic moment compelling the former president and first lady to testify shows how serious the investigation has become. Bowing to the threat. February 26th and 27th. Mark your calendar. The first time lawmakers have compelled a former president and his wife to testify. Associated Press says they are bowing to the threat of a contempt of Congress charge against them. Lindell TV also weighing in. They're agreeing to testify. Let's hear what they had to say.
The Clintons, Bill and Hillary, have agreed to testify in the House Oversight Committee's investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. Now, this comes just as lawmakers were preparing to take the rare step of holding the former president and former Secretary of State in contempt of Congress. There has been a lot of back and forth between Congress and the Clintons' attorneys. Now here we have a letter from the House Oversight Committee telling them they are not above the law and will not get special treatment. This letter from the House Oversight to the Clintons' attorneys. Representative James Comer had this to say before the vote this week. Listen.
Thank you, Chairwoman Fox and Ranking Member McGovern. I urge the Rules Committee to grant a prompt rule for the House's consideration of both the resolution recommending that the House of Representatives find former President of the United States, William J. Clinton, in contempt of Congress for refusal to comply with a subpoena duly issued by the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, and the resolution recommending that the House of Representatives find former Secretary of State Hillary R. Clinton in contempt of Congress for refusal to comply with the subpoena duly issued by the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. Subpoenas are not mere suggestions. They carry the force of law and require compliance. Former President Clinton and former Secretary Clinton were legally required to appear for a deposition before the House Oversight Committee. They refused, and actions have consequences. Last July, Republicans and Democrats on the House Oversight Committee's Federal Law Enforcement Subcommittee unanimously approved a voice vote, a motion to subpoena former President Clinton and former Secretary Clinton for depositions as part of our investigation into the federal government's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell criminal cases. On August 5th, I issued subpoenas to them. The testimonies of President Clinton and Secretary Clinton are critical to understanding Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking network and the ways he sought to curry favor and influence to shield himself from scrutiny. In fact, then Secretary of State Clinton would have signed off on the annual Trafficking in Persons report. In 2010, under Secretary Clinton's tenure, that report began covering trafficking within the United States. Given her service as Secretary of State, she could provide firsthand information about the federal government's efforts to combat international sex trafficking. Their testimony may also inform how Congress can strengthen laws to better combat human trafficking. Since issuing the subpoenas, the Oversight Committee has acted in good faith. We've offered flexibility on scheduling. We've tried to accommodate. The response we received was not cooperation, but defiance, repeated delays, excuses, and obstruction. President Clinton and Secretary Clinton claimed to have been treated unfairly because the Oversight Committee accepted written statements under penalty of law from former U.S. attorneys Gonzalez, Holder, Lynch, Sessions, and Garland, as well as former FBI Director Comey. Those written statements were accepted.
Okay, so did you hear what he said? Why are we going to bring Hillary? Well, she has important insight into the whole trafficking thing because she signed off on legislation and policy. So we want to get her expert analysis. Oh, this is going to be beautiful. You see, the bottom line here, February 26th and 27th will be historic dates. For the first time in American history, a former president and his wife are being compelled to testify about their connections to a convicted sex trafficker. No more hiding. No more deflecting. Just them under oath facing questions they've avoided for years. The truth is finally coming. You see, this represents everything wrong with our two-tier justice system. The political elite thinking that they're above the law, above accountability, above the American people. But thanks to a Republican-controlled House willing to use their congressional authority, that era is ending. The Clintons built their empire on secrets, backroom deals, and the assumption that their power would protect them forever. That assumption just crumbled. When Hillary takes that oath on February 26th, followed by Bill on the 27th, they'll face something they've avoided their entire political careers. Actual consequences. The American people deserve answers, and finally, we're going to get them. Do you believe the Clintons will tell the whole truth under the oath? Let me know. And don't forget to check out the Next News merch shop for gear that shows you stand with America First patriots demanding real accountability. Party's over, Bill. Party is over. The noise at the beginning and the end of the segment is ear-piercing. Yeah, sort of trying to figure out the best way to do that. Sorry. Nothing I can do. Okay. All right. We are going into our next topic here. Any super chats to speak of? Let's see. Super chats. No super chats. Okay. Well, maybe some will come in. Remember, this is your microphone. Thank you, Rick Hall. Get you some cowbells. They will just answer every question with "I don't recall." What difference does it make? Right? All right. Let's get into the next segment. President Trump just unleashed hell on ISIS leaders hiding in Somali caves, killing 14 operatives in precision strikes. But here's what the mainstream media won't tell you about the timing of the airstrikes and what's really happening behind the scenes. You see, the connection to Minnesota will blow your mind. See, it's not just about foreign policy. This is about your safety. ISIS-Somalia has been plotting attacks on American soil, and Trump's decisive action just saved American lives. Meanwhile, investigations into Somali-connected fraud networks in Minnesota are heating up. The timing of these strikes sends a crystal clear message. The establishment media is desperately trying to downplay Trump's victory, but the numbers don't lie. 126 airstrikes in 2025 alone, with 18 more just in January. Trump is systematically dismantling terrorist networks that threaten our homeland while exposing corruption right here in America. Speaking of national security threats, there is another critical issue that's demanding our immediate attention. Breaking news under the radar, January 5th, 2026, U.S. Department of Energy announced $2.7 billion in contracts to restore domestic uranium enrichment capabilities. Now, this is not just government spending. It's a declaration of intent. America needs uranium. It needs domestic uranium, and it needs it right now. While Trump eliminates ISIS threats abroad, we're dangerously dependent on foreign uranium at home. The U.S. consumes 50 million pounds annually, but produces almost none. And that's where Atomic Minerals comes in. They're not just another mining company. They're America's uranium insurance policy. The project's strategically positioned near existing infrastructure and a management team that understands the urgency. Atomic Minerals represents the future of American energy independence. Visit the link in the description for your exclusive briefing and discover why smart investors are positioning themselves in America's uranium renaissance, because energy security is national security. And just like Trump's precision strikes protect us overseas, domestic uranium protects our energy grid right here at home. Now, here's the part that will make your blood boil. While Trump was eliminating terrorists, guess who he called out? Ilhan Omar. Trump's Truth Social post asked if Omar was there to protect her corrupt homeland. The Minnesota connection runs deep, folks. We're talking about fraud investigations, terrorist sympathies, and a Congress member who constantly opposes American interests. Now, remember, this is the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. Remember what was happening in December. Listen.
Remember what was happening in December, Laura? We had a massive fraud going on all through Minneapolis, all through Minnesota, and suddenly it turned. It turned almost on a dime, and it became suddenly all about ICE, all about getting ICE out and how horrible ICE was doing. But really what we have here is a massive underground fraud network operating in Minneapolis, and we had a very strong pushback when we raised our hands and said stop. And so, yes, we have multiple investigations going on. We sent prosecutors from Maine Justice. We sent prosecutors from other U.S. attorneys' offices all over the country, and we're making progress every day.
Making progress every day, are we? I mean, think about it. Cash flowing from the U.S. Treasury, getting defrauded, right, by, daycare centers and medical transports and restaurants. getting shipped out of the country in suitcases right into the hands of where? ISIS-connected terrorists in Somalia. And what does Trump do? He goes and launches strikes against those terrorists. You see, the left wants to go ahead and create distractions with, ICE is bad and ICE is not legit and they're just masked Nazis, right? Well, Trump has a bigger stick than those Soros-connected AstroTurf paid agitators. Okay, Trump has the U.S. military in his back pocket. He's the commander in frickin' chief. So you guys want to start some trouble over there in the streets of Minneapolis. Trump's going to start some real trouble on the streets of Somalia. Okay? The Minnesota fraud story is about to explode into something much bigger. Watch how the corruption tentacles spread beyond just one state. Oh, remember how we've been tracking Ilhan Omar's net worth? Well, another member of the squad now popping on the radar. Massive calls pouring in to investigate Democrat Representative Ayanna Pressley after her net worth exploded from negative $12,500 in 2018 up to $8 million in assets by 2024. Another corrupt Democrat. Fox News covering it, Gunter Eagleman amplifying, and so are we.
This is a Fox News alert. It looks like Ilhan Omar isn't the only millionaire squad member. Now, our team dug into open secrets and financial disclosure reports. What we found is that when Ayanna Pressley was elected to Congress back in 2018, she had a negative net worth. You fast forward to today, she's worth $1.3 million with assets worth up to $8 million. Now, that's a massive increase in just 6 years, especially for someone on a $174,000 congressional salary. It's impressive, really. But how did she do it? Well, part of its property in 2024, Pressley reported owning a Martha's Vineyard rental worth up to $5 million, as well as multiple Boston rentals worth up to $1 million each. Now, for context, back in 2019, she only reported owning one property in Boston. We're also learning days before Pressley was sworn into Congress, her husband quit his $92,000 annual Boston City Hall job to start his own consulting firm called Conan Harris and Associates. And as we read more of the Congresswoman's financial disclosure reports, we learn that her husband also saw his income jump while he was in Washington. His client list consists of some government organizations, including one with deep ties to the Obama Foundation. But as he started his firm and seeked new clients, he faced ethics concerns because of Pressley's job in Congress. Quote, as Harris's days dwindled in the city's Office of Public Safety, he used his city-issued email account to pitch Walsh's chief of staff on staying on as a consultant. City officials say they did not solicit nor accept the offer, and state ethics laws bar municipal employees from knowingly using official resources for personal gain. Now, we asked Pressley for comment, and we even invited her on. She did not answer. Of course not. But Fox Business anchor David Asman joins me now. He's been looking over this information. And David, there's no...
Okay, so the Pressley bombshell shows is not isolated to Minnesota. No. Federal agents taking direct action on the ground. Nick Sortor reports. Just in, despite the leftist rioting, DHS, FBI, and IRS agents are going door to door, raiding fraudulent Somali and other businesses in Minneapolis. Keep it up. Don't let the radical left goons slow you guys down. Look at this. Yeah, baby. Door to door. It's happening. I love it. I love it. You mess with the bull, you get the horns. Right? You see, Trump's got the feds on the ground. He's got the cruise missiles in the sky. They messed with the wrong guy. Let's keep going. While they're finding the domestic fraud, they're also uncovering how the money moves and where it goes internationally. Check this out. A whistleblower, TSA whistleblower who worked at MSP Airport in St. Paul, says she witnessed Somali men in pairs go through the airport with suitcases full of cash on a weekly basis. They were allowed to go right through. She said it could have been as much as $1 billion. Yeah. You want to hear this story? Listen carefully.
To 2021. Liz, thank you for joining me.
You're welcome. Thank you, Liz. I applaud you and Alpha News.
We appreciate that. I have to say, though, this sounds like something out of a spy movie. People going through security and getting on planes with suitcases filled with millions of dollars in cash. Tell us what you've actually seen as a TSA agent during the time you worked there.
Well, I've actually seen a lot of things, but the most shocking is exactly that. I saw suitcases filled with millions of dollars of cash, and the couriers were always Somali men traveling in pairs. And they got through the checkpoint. It just really absolutely blew my mind the first time you open a suitcase and you see millions of dollars of cash. And typically what would happen is a Leo or a law enforcement officer would come, check their credentials. I don't know what kind of questions they asked them, but their IDs were always documented, and probably their plane tickets as well. So there is a trail of that out there. And I would believe with all the cameras at the airport that if they started there, they could probably find each and every individual that brought money through the checkpoint.
Obviously, this seems suspicious, if not alarming, given what seems to be a pattern here. So you're talking about millions of dollars flying out of Minneapolis, and you think it happened about every week or so? Is that right?
So it certainly seemed like it happened every week. The suitcases came in, and it was always, the MO was always two Somalian men traveling in pairs. Sometimes they both had suitcases. And so the process was, as a TSA agent, we would pull the bag, and then we'd bring them to a private screening room. And we would open the suitcase and make sure that that's all it was stacks of cash. And a Leo would come and maybe question them and for sure take a picture of their identification, and I'm assuming their plane ticket. I'm not sure. So there is a trail out there between that. I mean,
2016 to 2021. Liz, thank you for joining me.
Stacks of cash. This TSA whistleblower just connected the dots between domestic fraud and international cash flows. DHS is building the paper trail. The paper trail will tell Homeland Security. That's what they posted. DHS, in conjunction with other federal agencies, are gathering mountains of evidence of the unchecked fraud that took place in Minnesota. Every bit of wrongdoing is documented and will be used to extract justice. More video. DHS posting that official video. Here's another video. Looks like at the tea house. There's a picture. IRS on the ground. This is where the story takes a dramatic turn. Trump just connected the Minnesota investigation to military action overseas. Trump has released the footage of the airstrike against ISIS targets in Somalia. Check this out. Unclassified now. Here it is. Unclassified footage. Bye-bye. You see all that U.S. currency flying in the air? Of course, right? They got to hide their cash somewhere, right? I kid, of course, but this is the unclassified footage of the big stick being wielded against the Somali terrorists who have been recipients of those suitcases of cash. This is just too crazy. Well, I mean, when you think about what is actually happening, how it's all connected. President Trump, this morning I ordered precision military airstrikes on the senior ISIS attack planner and other terrorists he recruited and led in Somalia. These killers, who we found hiding in caves, threatened the United States and our allies. The strikes destroyed the caves they live in and killed many terrorists without in any way harming civilians. Our military has targeted this ISIS attack planner for years, but Biden and his cronies wouldn't act quickly enough to get the job done. I did. The message to ISIS and all others who would attack America is that we will find you and we will kill you. The words of the commander-in-chief. The airstrike footage is not coincidental timing. Trump is sending a message that connects to domestic and foreign policy. Here's Trump on the Somalians.
The people from different countries that are not friendly to us and countries that are out of control themselves. Countries like Somalia that have virtually no government, no military, no police. All they do is go around killing each other. Then they come into our country and tell us how to run our country. We don't want them. What are you talking about? You got to talk up.
She said how many countries? Is there a list?
Well, I guess we gave you 19, right? There's probably more than that.
Is that what you mean when you mean third world countries, those 19?
No, I don't think they're all third world, but in many cases they are third world. They're not good countries. They're very crime-ridden countries. They're countries that don't do a good job. They're countries that don't register from the standpoint of success. And we, frankly, don't need their people coming into our country telling us what to do.
When you talk about
I'm talking about like Somalia, where you have a congressman goes around telling everybody about our Constitution, and yet she supposedly came into our country by marrying her brother. Well, if that's true, she shouldn't be a congressman, and we should throw her the hell out of our country.
Hell yeah. She married her brother. Boom. President Trump making this personal and political, directly linking the Somali strikes to the Minnesota Somali community. Here's what he said when talking with Dan Bongino, who's back on the air.
State really rigged badly with the Somalians and the theft. And I guess you studied it, but I hear it's over $19 billion, okay? Can you imagine? They have a country where they have no money, they have no nothing, and they come over here and they steal. They're able to steal more than $19 billion. And we're right on their ass.
Yeah, that was
We're
one of
right
the first
there.
cases
But
when
these,
I got in
These are people that don't work.
Yeah.
Dan, these are people that don't work. These are people that are just not an asset to our society, to put it mildly. And we got to get them out, most of them. And it's most of them.
I want to tell the audience.
92% don't work.
Yeah.
And they have an unbelievable system, corrupt system of welfare. You know, many of them drive Mercedes-Benzes, had nothing when they came over. The good news is, you notice they don't see ships being stolen anymore from Somalia, because we hit those guys with the same weapon that we take out the drug dealers from the ocean. We stop every time we hit a boat. We knocked out. We saved 25,000 lives. Each boat, and pretty accurate, each boat is responsible for the death of 25,000 Americans. Think of that, okay? And we knock them out like candy. We are knocking them out. We also do that with the pirates in Somalia. That's why you don't see ships being taken anymore, because they don't play games. So, you know, they were stealing ships every day. Now it takes courage to steal ships. They don't do it. You understand.
Oh, President Trump. Trump escalating the rhetoric, putting specific dollar amounts on the fraud and promising deportation. Trump never misses a shot at Ilhan Omar. After the U.S. strike killed 14 terrorists in Somalia, he asked if she was there protecting her corrupt homeland. The strike hit caves used by ISIS leaders. No civilians were harmed, according to AFRICOM. Omar was not harmed. Here's the post. Was Ilhan Omar there to protect her corrupt homeland? Yeah. No, but she was certainly counting the money. Trump just made this about Ilhan Omar specifically. He's connecting a sitting congresswoman to both the fraud investigation and foreign military action. Apparently now we also have this. Turkey has expanded its military footprint in Africa by deploying some of its F-16s to Somalia. Well, you can't run F-16s on camel piss, so good luck with that. Better footage from the Mogadishu, which shows Turkish F-16s taking off. The Turkey deployment shows the Somalia situation is getting more complex internationally while Trump ramps up operation. Trump ordering airstrikes on ISIS leaders in Somalia. The news is everywhere. New York Post confirming, giving mainstream credibility to what started as social media reports about the strikes. President Trump, here's the post again. Trump destroys Ilhan Omar. Where was Ilhan Omar there to protect her homeland? And then President Trump posted a link to Fox News of the U.S. video that has been declassified. We just showed you. The attacks intensifying as military operations expand. Trump's making this simultaneously about domestic policies and foreign policy. Somali ISIS leader hunted as U.S. ramps up airstrikes against the terror group. U.S. Africa Command attacked ISIS targets on January 30th and the latest strike against the terror group in Somalia. So ISIS operations ramping up. It's not one strike. It's becoming a sustained campaign. More footage from that strike. It is dramatically increasing, and we're looking at long-term military escalation in Somalia and, of course, in Minnesota. During the first month of 2026, U.S. Africa Command announced 18 strike operations targeting either Al-Shabaab, 11, or ISIS-Somalia, 7. This follows a record-breaking 2025 in which the U.S. conducted 126 airstrikes, 74 against ISIS-Somalia, 52 against Al-Shabaab. There's the chart right there. Trump is publicizing the classified military operation and using the footage as both foreign policy and domestic political messaging. Trump sharing the video of the U.S. strikes on ISIS leaders on February 1st, killing 14 operatives with no civilians harmed. Friends, this is what real leadership looks like. No endless committee hearings, no diplomatic hand-wringing. Trump identified the threat, ordered the strikes, and eliminated 14 ISIS operatives without a single civilian casualty. Meanwhile, he's exposing the corruption networks that have been bleeding America dry for decades. So the contrast could not be clearer. Trump delivers results while his enemies make excuses. These Somalia strikes prove he's still the most effective commander-in-chief we've had in decades. Yes, the establishment fears him because he gets things done while they profit from America's weakness. The Minnesota fraud investigation is just beginning, and Trump's message to terrorist sympathizers everywhere is unmistakable. There's nowhere to hide. Do you think Trump's decisive action against ISIS terrorists proves he's the leader America needs right now? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to check out the Next News merch shop for gear that shows your America First pride. All right. President Trump reminding them who's really in charge, really on all fronts. No super chats to speak of. Moving right along here. And let's see. Okay. Okay. This is an interesting story that is currently developing. And it's been brewing for some time. We've been tracking what's been going on. We've been tracking what they've been building in Cuba for quite some time, actually, since going back to the Biden administration. So we've got some footage here we're going to set up for you. And we're going to go into what is actually happening on the ground and what the president is doing. So this is a huge development. So buckle up. We're going to move right into our third topic of the evening because that's what we do here. While the establishment media obsesses over manufactured controversies, President Trump is quietly orchestrating what could be the most brilliant foreign policy move in decades. Cuba is starving. China is watching, and Trump just revealed he's in high-level talks with Cuban leaders about a deal that could flip the script on communist influence just 90 miles from our shores. So here's what's really at stake. Cuba has maybe 2 weeks of oil left. Their Venezuelan lifeline is gone. Russia and Algeria have abandoned them. Mexico cut them off. The island is facing total collapse, but here's the kicker. China has been using Cuba as a spy base to monitor American military operations. Every day we delay, Beijing gets more intel on our defenses. For you personally, this means Chinese surveillance capabilities aimed directly at Florida's coast. Socially, we're talking about preventing a massive refugee crisis that would overwhelm our southern border. Politically, Trump has a narrow window to secure America's backyard before the deep state sabotages these very talks. And speaking of never surrendering on America's interests, you know what caught my eye recently? Yes. You ever see something and instantly know it's going to turn heads? That's exactly what happened when I saw these Trump never surrender gold sneakers from MAGA offers. Now, these aren't subtle, and they're not supposed to be. Gold finish, red, white, and blue details, never surrender right on the shoe. You put these on and you're making a statement that you stand with the fighter who never backs down. Whether Trump's negotiating with Cuba, taking on the deep state, he never surrenders, and neither should you. These shoes represent that exact fighting spirit that we need right now. Get them at themagaoffers.com/NNN. You'll find it linked down below. But back to this Cuba situation, because the timing here is absolutely critical. Yes, here's where it gets interesting. Secretary Rubio is being attacked by Cuban Americans for even mentioning talks with the regime. They're calling him a fraud, saying he's soft on communism, but Trump isn't backing down. He's calling Cuba a long-failed nation while simultaneously working the diplomatic angle. You see, this is classic Trump negotiation. Maximum pressure while keeping the door open for a deal that serves American interests. Now, we're going to take you flashback here. This is the Biden Secretary of State. United States officially confirming Chinese electronic intelligence complex located on the territory of Cuba. Now, this was during the Biden administration.
Can you just explain why you didn't confirm all of this when it was first reported last week? You said it was inaccurate, but what was inaccurate seemed to basically be the tense that they, weren't going to establish but had already established this facility. Why wait till Saturday to put this out there?
I'm actually really glad you asked that question. I can tell you that we were as forthcoming as we should have been at the time the first stories appeared. There is the sensitive nature of this information is such that we just simply couldn't go into more detail, even before the first story appeared, to try to better inform that reporting. That's how sensitive this stuff is. We just couldn't be more detailed. And then after the first stories appeared, we worked very, very hard, as expeditiously as we could, with the intelligence community to try to get some context downgraded so that we could provide it over the weekend, and we did that. But we were as forthcoming as we should have been, given the nature of this information.
So this is when the Biden administration admitted the spy bases. And now we also have this just breaking. Doug Burgum weighs in on a possible deal with Cuba. This just in moments ago.
I think we're going to make a deal with Cuba. So nobody knows what this deal looks like. What can you tell us?
Well, with President Trump, whatever deal that he strikes is going to be good for the American people. And this is just another example of President Trump understanding that energy dominance leads to peace abroad. It leads to prosperity at home. And energy dominance allows energy diplomacy. The ability to take a country like Cuba that was in cahoots with Venezuela, with their corrupt government, providing security forces to Venezuela, providing other assistance to that, and then in trade, getting Venezuelan oil sanctioned, with President Trump now enforcing sanctions. Unlike prior administration, the Biden administration had sanctions on Iran, Russia, others, and then we just turned we turned all these countries into China's discount gas station.
Yeah. President Trump getting closer to a deal. And back to the CCP. Now, this is from 2025, the CCP building a surveillance and strike network in Cuba, 90 miles from Florida, With at least 4 bases monitoring U.S. military sites and ships equipped with missiles and tracking tech, the CCP's presence is no longer covert.
90 miles from Florida, the CCP is establishing a surveillance and strike network. At least 4 CCP-linked bases are now operating in Cuba, America's backyard, where they are monitoring U.S. military sites ranging from Guantanamo Bay to Cape Canaveral. Satellite images reveal ongoing upgrades, including the installation of long-range antenna arrays. Lawmakers warn that these facilities could enable Beijing to intercept communications, map U.S. response capabilities, and wage war without firing a shot. However, this is only the tip of the iceberg. Years ago, Miles Guo revealed that the CCP had also set up drone bases across Cuba and nearby islands. The so-called cargo ships near the Key West Naval Base are operated by the China Overseas Engineering Group, COVEC, and are equipped with missile systems, surveillance gear, and tracking technology. From telecommunications to sea lanes, CCP infiltration in the Western Hemisphere is no longer covert.
Yeah, so now you know. Now we're seeing the full scope of the Chinese surveillance network, with lawmakers sounding alarm bells about missiles and tracking technology just miles from American soil. China to establish spy base in Cuba. Wall Street Journal. Beijing has reportedly agreed to pay Havana billions of dollars to build an electronic surveillance facility focused on the United States. RT reporting Beijing's massive financial investment in the spy operation, showing just how committed China is to monitoring the U.S. from our own back door. Here's our own report. When we initially covered it, new satellite imagery reveals China is quietly upgrading high-tech surveillance installations just 90 miles from Florida. What they're building and why. You see here some of the imagery of the Bujikal Signet facility. Signals intelligence, you can see under construction. Satellite evidence backing up these reports, but here's what the story takes a dramatic turn. Trump is making big moves. Here's Trump.
Nation now, and they're not getting any money from Venezuela, and they're not getting any money from anywhere. It's a failed nation. Mexico is going to cease sending them oil. So I'd like to take care of the people that are here from Cuba. You know, we have many people that came from Cuba that were thrown out of Cuba or that fled Cuba. They came over on rafts. They went through shark-infested waters. I don't know how they did it. And it was many years ago. Many would like to go back. Many would like to at least visit their relatives. And I think we're at a pretty close point. We are dealing with the Cuban leaders right now.
We're dealing with the Cuban leaders. Trump dropping the bombshell. He's negotiating with Cuban leaders using Cuba's economic desperation as leverage. And what is the Dunroe Doctrine? The Department of State just put this out. This is actually interesting. Wait till you see this.
Will you make a public commitment today to rule out U.S. regime change in Cuba?
Regime change?
Yes.
Oh, no, I think we would love to see the regime there change.
The president just mistook the two countries for each other, correct?
Yeah, he meant to say Greenland, but I think we're all familiar with presidents that have verbal stumbles. We've had presidents like that before. Some made a lot more than this one.
Bombing a capital, blockading a country, and removing elected officials.
We didn't remove an elected official. We removed someone who was not elected, and it was actually an indicted drug trafficker in the United States.
Are you the lead for U.S. government on foreign policy?
No. The lead on U.S. foreign policy is named Donald J. Trump, the President of the United States.
We have not received any information on the Board of Peace. Do you commit to informing us about what the heck this is?
Yeah, it's a Board of Peace.
What is your criteria for returning to a military option and putting boots on?
Well, I don't recall the president saying he was going to put troops in Venezuela. Where did he say that?
I'm asking you, what are your...
But that's what you said. I didn't remember
the president has already said that he was ready to put American troops in Venezuela.
No, I think the president has said that he retains the right as commander-in-chief to protect the United States against any imminent threats. Maybe that involves troops, maybe that involves air power. We hope, but we don't anticipate that being the case in Venezuela.
Oh, man, Rubio. You got to love it, man. Rubio taking them all down one by one. The State Department stays quiet with just a link, but other sources are filling in the diplomatic details. Trump dismissed diplomatic talks with Mexico over the country's intention to continue sending oil to Cuba as humanitarian aid as Havana's economy teeters on the brink. Here's more of the president on Air Force One.
Trump dismisses talks with Mexico over oil shipments to Cuba going to cease.
President Donald Trump has dismissed diplomatic talks with Mexico regarding its intention to continue sending oil to Cuba as humanitarian aid. Trump called Cuba a failed nation and stated that Mexico is going to cease sending oil as Havana's economy teeters on the brink of collapse. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum stated that while they will send other products, oil shipments for humanitarian reasons will be solved through diplomatic means. Reports indicate Cuba has less than a month worth of oil remaining. Thank you for watching. Be sure to stay tuned.
That was the Latin Times, and Trump is dismissing Mexico's oil lifeline to Cuba, tightening the economic noose. The pressure campaign is deliberate and strategic. Cuba and the United States are in communication, a Cuban diplomat told Reuters, although he said exchanges have not yet evolved into formal dialogue.
We don't have a table of dialogue between the two countries. We have had exchange of messages. We have embassies. We have had communications. But we cannot say that we have a table of dialogue. Now, the U.S. government knows that we are ready to have a serious, meaningful, and responsible dialogue based on the respect for sovereign equality, respect for international law, and that we are sure that there are many issues that we could discuss, including many on which we have differences, and that perhaps many of them could find solution if there were to be a dialogue between the two countries. The United States has gone very far in its level of threats, and above all, in the magnitude of the economic aggression against the people of Cuba, and also in the type of excuses it's raising. It has gone to the point of identifying Cuba as a threat to the national security of the United States, something that most people in the US and outside of the US will find it absurd, but yet the government found it necessary to raise that, to claim that Cuba has foreign military bases, that Cuba harbors terrorism, all of which the US government, and in particularly the authorities that are responsible for those issues in the US, know very well that that is untrue.
I just showed you the basis, pal. Reuters confirms diplomatic channels real, even Cuba's downplaying this informal communication. Congressman Byron Donalds, who's running for governor of Florida, says we strongly support Trump's decisive actions to hold the Cuban regime accountable, protect the security of the United States and our hemisphere. So he's on board. Republicans backing Trump's hardline approach, emphasizing 90-mile proximity makes this a national security imperative. Here's more. President Trump discussing Cuba.
Well, Cuba's in bad shape. Cuba relied on Venezuela for oil and for money. And nobody really knows what's going to happen with Cuba. They're doing very poorly. They're really third world all the way. And we have a lot of great Cuban Americans. And I would say Marco fits very solidly into that category. And I might ask you to say a few words about, we were discussing it before, Cuba is a very different, they don't have energy, they don't have oil, but they would live off of the oil from Venezuela. And what they do have is very strong people. And very powerful people militarily, and they would protect the people running Venezuela, and they would take in a lot of money from Venezuela. Now they don't have that. They won't be taking in any money. So, Marco, what do you think?
Well, I mean, the fundamental problem in Cuba is that it's run by incompetent people that don't know what an economy looks like, much less a functioning one. They've made a choice, and that is they would rather have political control over the people than they would to have an economy that functions. And they've gotten away with it for 60-something years because they've had donors, the Soviet Union, and now most recently Venezuela. But that's now gone. So the people in control in Cuba have a choice to make. They can either have a real country with a real economy where their people can prosper, or they can continue with their failing dictatorship that's going to lead to systemic and societal collapse. So it's a very stark and dramatic choice, and it's one we hope to make the right one. We don't have an interest in a destabilized Cuba, but that would be their fault because they refuse to allow the people of Cuba to have either economic or political freedom for that matter.
And you have a lot of people in this country that want to go back to Cuba and help Cuba. A lot of people have left, they came in penniless, they didn't have anything, and they've become very rich people in our country, and they want to very much go back and help Cuba. So
That's something that Cuba has that a lot of other places don't have.
Trump's painting Cuba as desperate in third world, Rubio hinting at the ultimatums, the administration playing hardball. Now, take another flashback here. This was in 2024, Diaz-Canel warning the U.S. would escalate economic suffocation and weaponize energy, media, and pressure to force collapse. Now, in 2026, Washington is openly tightening fuel access and sanctions. What Cuba called coming has just arrived.
They're always looking for justifications and twisting things around. The most absurd thing is that they have applied a criminal blockade against us for over 65 years. That is what's absurd. And the absurdity of that blockade is what has triggered all the other reactions to the things that happen. I believe that both the spokespeople for the United States State Department and the United States government, as well as its embassy here in Cuba, are interventionist and arrogant, and they feel a deep contempt for the people and the Cuban Revolution. And we do not have to be accountable to the United States government or to any of its spokespeople, because we are free, sovereign, and independent, and we are going to keep building our revolution despite the tightening of the blockade and despite having been included on a spurious list that only a government so genocidal and so hegemonic as the U.S. government could invent of countries that supposedly support terrorism. And this event is proof. We are open to the world, and in the midst of so many difficulties and so much adversity, here we are, also betting on the development of the country. You should not worry about the spokespeople. They simply do not mean anything to us.
Many are predicting the imminent collapse of Cuba. How do you respond to such claims?
Let them come and try it. Above all, let them try to bring us down and see what happens to them. The revolution is very solid, and the Cuban people are very aware of what it means to lose the revolution. The United States government, in its hegemonic drive, is constantly trying to implement a platform of neocolonial and neoliberal restoration in Cuba, and they are not going to achieve that. And that is why it turns to a policy of maximum pressure that has two fundamental elements. On one hand, an economic suffocation to seek, through economic strangulation, a social outburst that breaks the unity of the Cuban people with the revolution. And on the other hand, the media poisoning, which is an expression of everything that happened on Sunday, 2 or 3. Protest events that essentially were peaceful, and they virtually set a stage as if events were occurring. Here, in the world, there are protests like those, even more severe than those. They exist. And those in the United States of this type are also repressed with violence, like others in Latin American countries and around the world. However, the ones in Cuba are the news. Why? Because there is a total perversity in the way they address the issues. But we are very serene, very calm, and no one stops our progress of our important project.
That was back in 2024. The flashback shows that Cuba saw a pressure campaign coming, and now those predictions are coming true in real time. More breaking updates. Trump says he's ready for the Cuba deal amid the island's fuel crisis.
See from Cuba? I mean, what do you need to see to make that kind of deal?
I think we're going to work a deal with Cuba. I think, we'll be kind. We have a situation that's very bad for Cuba. They have no money. They have no oil. Venezuela, they live off Venezuelan money and oil. And none of that's coming now.
Yeah. Chickens coming home to roost. Trump's tone shifts. He's talking about being kind and working out deals, suggesting he sees opportunity. Trump calling Cuba a long-failed nation without the Venezuelan support. A failed nation. Trump acknowledges ongoing high-level talks about some sort of deal with Cuba.
Reporters outside of Mar-a-Lago and Palm Beach, Florida on February 1st of 2026, President Trump made some interesting statements about Cuba and how the United States is potentially looking to make some sort of a deal, framing it around humanitarian concerns like Cuba's dire situation and family separations affecting Cuban exiles in the United States, as well as support for Cuban Americans, many of whom were horribly treated by the regime prior to exiting the country. Anyway, let's see what he had to say.
Sir, what do you want out of a Cuba deal?
Well, Cuba's a failing nation. It has been for a long time, but now it doesn't have Venezuela to prop it up. So we're talking to the people from Cuba, the highest people in Cuba, to see what happens. I want the people that came here that were horribly treated by Cuba to be taken care of, to be able to go back and do what they have to do. They have their family there. They haven't been able to see them in years, many, many years. So I think we're going to make a deal with Cuba.
President Trump, back to Texas.
It's in bad shape. Cuba's in bad shape. Cuba has a humanitarian problem.
Cuba has a humanitarian problem. President Trump acknowledging high-level talks about a deal, the breakthrough closer than anyone realized. And here's President Trump said that they're close to an agreement.
Sir, yesterday you said you were speaking to people about Cuba to reach an agreement. What
Right.
sort of agreement are you hoping to reach? Is that with the Cuban government?
Well, it's a
What would you
failed
like to
nation
see?
now, and they're not getting any money from Venezuela, and they're not getting any money from anywhere. It's a failed nation. Mexico is going to cease sending them oil. So I'd like to take care of the people that are here from Cuba. We have many people that came from Cuba that were thrown out of Cuba or that fled Cuba. They came over on rafts. They went through shark-infested waters. I don't know how they did it. And it was many years ago. Many would like to go back. Many would like to at least visit their relatives. And I think we're at a pretty close point. We are dealing with the Cuban leaders right now.
Mr. President.
We are dealing with them. It sounds like a deal may be very close. President Trump turns his focus to Cuba after the arrest of Nicolas Maduro, saying he's in talks with top leaders as he hosts the Colombian president today.
Huge. And first of all, good morning and thank you so much for having me. But this is very important news. Why? Because according to analysts right now, Cuba has about 15 to 20 days of oil supply left.
Wow.
Let's just remember, they're just running dry. They lost that lifeline from Venezuela. They have allies like Russia and Algeria that they're basically taking a hands-off approach. We are not committing to sending any sort of aid. And then you also have Mexico. They stopped oil shipments to Cuba. So they don't have much. The situation there is just like, according to some experts, it's really turning into a catastrophic situation. Of course, we don't want a humanitarian crisis, but some Cuban Americans here are actually hopeful that this could lead to a total collapse.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Do you have any insight into what Cuban or Cuban Americans feel about this?
Well, there is some level of concern inside the island nation of about 8 million people. Some of them say, well, all these actions may just mean more hardship for the Cuban people, while the government, well, they're not going to be affected. But I believe perhaps if they're just so fed up and they're brave enough to take to the streets and protest, it could lead to some change. I know someone that periodically sends money to family in Cuba. She spoke to her father and said, how are you doing? And she said, well, he tells me, we've gone through so much already. It's been so many decades of facing this hardship that we're ready if this means a potential change.
Wow, so they would want to see that, some Cubans.
They want to free Cuba.
What would an America First deal look like? I mean, that's what President Trump ultimately wants.
Well, that's the big question. We heard President Trump yesterday saying we are working on a deal and we're talking to some high-level officials. We don't know the specific details, right? It's very vague right now, but there's hope. And there's something that really struck me. Republican Congressman Carlos Jimenez, he said, the situation in Cuba, it's like a cancer. And to treat it, it may take time and there's pain, but it's to save lives. And I really like that comparison because that's what may be the situation for Cuba in order to save the island nation.
Well, this was all sparked by the ousting of Nicolas Maduro. And Venezuela, we're learning, has just released additional political prisoners. But interim President Delcy Rodriguez is also being accused of slow-walking human rights reforms. And then there's this Wall Street Journal headline saying Venezuela's new leader, referring to Delcy Rodriguez, is trying to run out the clock on Trump. So what is next for the nation of Venezuela?
This left me thinking, running out the clock. The big question is Delcy Rodriguez just trying to kill time, doing just enough to appease the Trump administration? And the article goes on to cite a U.S. official that says there's a possibility we may see elections in Venezuela anywhere between 18 to 24 months. I checked the calendar. If we're talking about 24 months, that puts us in January of 2028. What does this mean? That's the end of President Donald Trump's second term in office. We don't know who the next president will be, what party will be in control in the U.S., and what their approach in regards to Venezuela will be. So, as you noted, so far there's a lot of criticism in terms of what they have been doing, what the interim government has been doing with respect to human rights. We have seen the release of 300 political prisoners so far, but hundreds more are still detained, and it's been slow. This past weekend, about 30.
Trump linking Cuba policy to broader regional strategy, including Maduro's arrest, talks with Colombia. This is hemispheric chess. Secretary Rubio, check this out, testifying on Venezuela.
For the first time in 20 years, we are having serious conversations about eroding and eliminating the Iranian presence, the Chinese influence, the Russian presence as well. In fact, I would tell you that there are many elements there in Venezuela that welcome a return to establishing relations to the United States on multiple fronts.
Multiple fronts. President Trump hitting every single front. So here's the bombshell that changes everything. Trump told reporters on Air Force One that we're pretty close to an agreement on Cuban officials, but they're denying formal talks exist. But Trump doesn't care about their public posturing. He's applying leverage when Cuba is most vulnerable, potentially flipping a Chinese asset into an American ally through sheer strategic brilliance. You see, the bottom line is this. Trump is playing three-dimensional chess while his critics play checkers. He's using Cuba's desperation to potentially eliminate a Chinese surveillance post in our backyard, prevent a humanitarian crisis that would flood our border, and demonstrate American strength to every hostile regime that's watching. This could be the deal that secures the Western Hemisphere for America First policies, the MAGA doctrine in effect. The establishment will try to sabotage it. Trump's track record speaks for itself. Do you trust Trump to negotiate the best deal for America, even when it means making tough diplomatic moves? Let us know. And while you're engaging, check out the Next News merch shop to show your support for real America First journalism. All right. Let's keep going. Any super chats to speak of? No super chats tonight. That is really strange. Wow, you guys are usually all on fire with super chats, and you want to see me do the Trump dance and all these things, but that's okay. More cowbell, though. You want more cowbell. All right. Okay, we got more news to get into here. Yes, the SAVE Act is something we have to pay close attention to. Very close attention to. Okay. Brian, I'm ready when you are. I hope your internet's stabilized again. Okay. President Trump just delivered the knockout punch Democrats never saw coming. While they were busy playing defense on illegal immigration, Trump just launched a coordinated assault on election fraud that's about to change everything. The Save America Act isn't just moving forward, it's steamrolling through Congress with bipartisan voter support that will leave you speechless. But here is the twist that nobody's talking about. Because it's not just about voter ID. This is about whether your vote will ever matter again. Right now, non-citizens are sitting on voter rolls in swing states, potentially canceling out your ballot in the midterms and beyond. Socially, we're watching the collapse of liberal narratives in real time. When 76% of black Americans support voter ID, the race-baiting playbook is officially dead. Politically, Trump just cornered the Senate Democrats into a trap they cannot escape. Vote against popular election security measures and face voter wrath, or support Trump's agenda and watch their base revolt. Majority Leader Thune's decision to bypass the filibuster signals something even bigger. The Republican establishment's finally ready to govern like they mean it. Now, before we dive into how Trump's outmaneuvering everyone, let's talk about another area where America is getting serious about national security. This went totally under the radar. January 5th, breaking news, the U.S. Department of Energy announced $2.7 billion in contracts to restore domestic uranium enrichment capabilities. This is not just government spending, it's a declaration of intent. America needs uranium, domestic uranium, and it needs it right now. You see, the U.S. consumes about 50 million pounds of uranium annually, but we only produce about 5% domestically. And the rest, we import from countries that don't always have our best interests at heart. And that's where Atomic Minerals comes in. They're not just another mining company. They are positioned at the epicenter of America's uranium renaissance, with projects strategically located near existing infrastructure and a management team with decades of experience. Atomic Minerals represents your opportunity to profit from America's energy independence. Visit the link that is in the description down below for your exclusive briefing to learn how you can invest in America's uranium future today. Because just like election security, energy security is putting America first. Now let's go back to President Trump's masterstroke, because this is what makes it even more explosive. DNI Tulsi Gabbard, she's been tapped to oversee election integrity as a whole of government operation. Think about that. A former Democrat who saw through the swamp's lies is now Trump's point person on cleaning up elections. Meanwhile, Senate Republicans are finally showing some backbone. The old school standing filibuster means Democrats will have to physically defend election fraud on C-SPAN for hours. Can you imagine Chuck Schumer explaining why requiring citizenship to vote is somehow racist? But that's what he does. The American people agree with you, Nicki Minaj. The American people are with Nicki Minaj, says CNN. They favor photo ID to vote.
American people are with Nicki Minaj, because what are we talking about here? So take a look here. Favor voter ID to vote. Look, I got all this polling on the screen going back since 2018. You'll notice on all of it, it's all north of 75%, 76%, 76%, 76%, 81%, and then 83% in the last year of Americans agree with Nicki Minaj. They favor photo ID to be able to vote.
Even CNN. CNN. I hope Chuck Schumer's watching. Nicki Minaj, right? What sensible, forward-thinking, cutting-edge leading nation is having a debate on whether or not there should be voter ID? Like they're actually fighting not to have people present ID while voting for your leaders. Do you get it? Do you get it now? The polling data sets up political pressure we're seeing from grassroots activists demanding action from GOP leadership. Hey, deadbeats, nuke the filibuster and pass the SAVE Act. It is time to end the filibuster and pass it. Grassroots pressure backing up the stunning cross-party polling numbers that are making the issue impossible for Democrats to oppose. In a stunning blow to Democrats, 76% of black Americans want nationwide voter ID. In other words, the Save America Act. White voters, 85% want it. Latino voters, 82% want it. Another leftist narrative just got decimated.
Look here, favor photo ID to vote. 85% of white people favor it. 82% of Latino. 76% of black Americans favor it. So the bottom line is this. Voter ID is not controversial in this country. A photo ID to vote is not controversial in this country. It is not controversial by party, and it is not controversial by race. The vast majority of Americans agree with Nicki Minaj that, in fact, you should have a photo ID to be able to vote. So something of a non.
You paying attention, Chuck? The poll numbers explain exactly why Senate leadership is now willing to take the dramatic step by bypassing the filibuster. Breaking news, leader John Thune says he'll bring the Save America Act to the floor without the 60-vote zombie filibuster, meaning senators must debate and 50 votes can be possible for passage. Representative Luna, we got assurances on the standing filibuster.
Representative Luna and myself are not willing.
Here's Tim Burchett.
So based on your discussion, it sounds like you're moving towards.
Yes, based on our discussion right now, we're moving towards it. Also, we got assurances on the standing filibuster, which is incredibly important. I don't know if you guys remember when I was talking about inherent contempt. A lot of people didn't know what that is. The standing filibuster is an old school parliamentary procedure, but it's a way to break through what we consider traditional norms to get voter ID passed. I think that it's brilliant that they came up with it, but exactly that's why we kind of have these discussions, and we're very happy about the outcome. So there should be a standing filibuster announced soon, and I would actually reach out to Senator Thune's office to ask him about that because they have different rules in the Senate.
So that'll get you to yes tomorrow on the rule.
Yeah, as of right now, we feel very comfortable where we're at based on what we are discussing.
Can I get your reaction to the Clintons agreeing to testify before the Oversight Committee?
I actually just got back from the White House, so that's our first knowledge of that. But I would say that, you know, I actually had inherent contempt prepared for it to be a civil, essentially charge of $5,000 a day.
Civil charges against the Clintons, she mentions. Nice. Leadership's procedural move is only the beginning. The SAVE Act itself has been significantly strengthened with new enforcement mechanisms. New election integrity push is a game changer. We told you yesterday they were going to update the SAVE Act. There were some glaring loopholes you could drive a truck through. We showed you the clip of the Majority Leader Thune discussing it. The updated SAVE Act doesn't stop at mandating proof of citizenship and photo ID to vote. It also forces states to clean voter rolls of non-citizens. God bless America.
Weeks, there has been a lot of news under the surface about the SAVE Act. This is a bill to safeguard our elections and require proof of U.S. citizenship before voting, among other provisions. Now, our conversation on this started with Scott Pressler, who has been calling on Senate Majority Leader John Thune to allow a vote every day since January 1st. Earlier this month, Scott joined me here to make his case.
The American people demand Senate Majority Leader John Thune bring a vote on the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, and let's have proof of citizenship to register to vote. We have this one moment in history with Donald Trump at the helm with a trifecta Republican government. I say nuke the gosh darn filibuster, pass law after law after law.
That interview went viral and senators went into action. Senator John Cornyn said he spoke to Leader Thune about the SAVE Act. Senators Katie Britt and Dave McCormick signed on as co-sponsors. And several others, like Rick Scott, ramped up his support publicly. Here's Senator Scott last week.
However we do this, all right, whether it's part of the spending bill this week, whether it's a separate bill, whether we have to stay there, you know, and do a standing filibuster, whatever it's going to take, we got to get this passed. We've got to secure our elections. I can't imagine a Republican senator that would vote against, you know, making sure that you have to have proof of citizenship to register to vote and to vote. Now, how could anybody, I don't know how a Democrat could be against this.
Yeah. After that interview came an avalanche of support for the SAVE Act. You see it here. The tally now sits at 49 co-sponsors, and Senate Majority Leader John Thune said this week he will allow a vote.
They are still modifying the bill. It includes right now a requirement that you be a citizen to register to vote, but it doesn't include a requirement that to vote you be a resident. That's being fixed and addressed, and I think the new bill that comes out hopefully will deal with that. But, I mean, at some point we'll have that vote.
Tennessee Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn, who's a co-sponsor, joins me now. Senator Blackburn, as we look at this, I believe there are either 4 or 5 Republican holdouts, and I'm curious, what's the holdup for some of your Republican colleagues?
Well, I never speak for my colleagues, Kaylee, but I will tell you this. It is important that people be a citizen, that they show proof of citizenship to register and to vote. And in Tennessee, we have been ranked #1 when it comes to safe elections. And we are so proud of our Secretary of State, Trey Hargett, and his team that have been able to put us in that #1 election integrity spot. And when you go to vote in Tennessee, you have to show who you are. These records have to match up. Every state should be certain that only citizens are voting in their elections.
You know, Senator Blackburn, your colleague, Senator Scott, I asked him about eliminating the filibuster because we know that there will be 60 votes that are going to be needed for this, and there are only 54 Republicans. He said that he would be open to maybe a carve-out for specific legislation, maybe attaching it to a spending bill, something, because this is that important. Where do you stand?
And one of the things that we have discussed, and Rick Scott, Senator Scott, leads our conservative group, our steering committee in the Senate. And we have talked about maybe we use it for the appropriations bill so you don't get into these shutdown fights. Maybe we review the 1974 Budget Act so that we go about appropriating differently. But here is the point. What you want to do is remove the ability of the Democrats to eliminate a filibuster and run roughshod, be able to pack the Supreme Court, be able to add D.C. and Puerto Rico and Guam as states, making certain that we preserve the integrity of our nation's elections and that we don't federalize elections, but it is your state and your local election commissions that are still going to be in charge of these. This is all about preserving who we are and what we are as a country, and that premise of one person, one vote.
Yeah.
Amen. Amen. The enhanced provisions have Trump's full backing and his press secretary making that support crystal clear. Caroline Leavitt says Trump is pushing for the Save America Act to be passed. Here she is at a gaggle earlier.
To be clear, he does believe the state should oversee elections.
The president believes in the United States Constitution. However, he believes there has obviously been a lot of fraud and irregularities that have taken place in American elections. And again, voter ID is a highly popular and common sense policy that the president wants to pursue, and he wants to pass legislation to make that happen for all states across the country.
And Carol, just to follow up on
And his personal push now being coordinated through the entire administration, with Gabbard leading a government-wide election security initiative. Here's more from the press secretary.
Tulsi Gabbard has been tapped by the President of the United States to oversee the sanctity and the security of our American elections. She's working directly alongside the FBI Director, Kash Patel. This is a coordinated whole-of-government effort to ensure that our elections, again, are fair and transparent moving forward. I don't see anything wrong with the President tasking a cabinet member to pursue an issue that most people want to see solved. Maybe you don't, but I know many Americans do want to make sure our elections are protected. And that's what Tulsi Gabbard is focused on doing.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Whole of government approach shows Trump is making election integrity a cornerstone priority, with his press secretary doubling down on the fraud concerns that are driving the push. Here's more from the press secretary.
The president was referring to is the SAVE Act, which is a huge common sense piece of legislation that Republicans have supported, that President Trump is committed to signing into law during his term. And he spoke with the speaker directly about that yesterday, about the need to get that bill on the floor for a vote, because it provides very common sense measures for voting in our country, such as voter ID. I don't think any rational person who's being honest with themselves would disagree with the idea of requiring citizens of this country to present an ID before casting a ballot in a federal election, or frankly in any election. And that's something the president wants to see happen. So that's what he was referring to.
But to be clear, he does believe the state should oversee elections.
The president believes in the United States Constitution. However, he believes there has obviously been a lot of fraud and irregularities that have taken place in American elections. And again, voter ID is a highly popular and common sense policy that the president wants to pursue, and he wants to pass legislation to make that happen for all states across the country.
All states across the country. You see, this is Trump's chess move that nobody anticipated. While Democrats spent 4 years screaming about election denialism, he quietly built overwhelming public support for common sense reforms. Now they're trapped, defending the indefensible, opposing measures that 85% of whites, 82% of Latinos, and 76% of Black Americans support. You know what that's called? It's called game over. The Save America Act represents everything that Trump promised, real change, not just rhetoric. For the first time in decades, we have a president willing to use every tool available to secure our elections, and a Senate majority ready to back him up. This is not about partisan politics. It's about ensuring every legal vote counts and every illegal vote doesn't. The question isn't whether this will pass. It's whether Democrats will finally admit they were wrong about voter ID all along. Do you think requiring proof of citizenship to vote should be the law of the land? Let me know in the comments. While you're at it, check out the Next News merch shop for gear that shows where you stand on America First policies. All right. Checking back in with our super chatters of the evening. We got a couple. Oh, look at that. Vicky coming in with $4.99. Thank you so much, Vicky. And Bill's Rules dropping $4.99 as well. Look at that. We are $90 from our goal tonight. I'll take what I can get. I appreciate you guys, sincerely. But we do have to move into the next topic because it's equally as important because it's about your money. It's about your money, and it's about ending the monopoly of the Federal Reserve. President Trump is about to make his big move. Okay. I'm ready, Brian. Did we lose Brian? Donald Trump just shattered decades of Federal Reserve tradition by nominating Kevin Warsh as the first pro-Bitcoin Fed chair in American history. While establishment cronies panic about their money-printing empire crumbling, Michael Saylor is celebrating what could be the most revolutionary appointment in modern financial history. But there's one GOP senator threatening to derail everything. Now, this is not just about cryptocurrency. This is about dismantling the Federal Reserve's stranglehold on your wealth. For 52% of Americans with no assets, Warsh understands that inflation is the ultimate regressive tax, stealing your purchasing power. Inflation is theft. We've said it time and time again for decades. Well, you see, he wants to shrink the Fed's $7 trillion balance sheet and stop their market manipulation. Your mortgage rates, your savings account, your retirement, everything depends on ending Jerome Powell's political games. The housing market is begging for relief, and Warsh, he could deliver it. But if establishment Republicans like Senator Tillis block the nomination, we're stuck with Powell's inflation machine destroying middle-class America, while Wall Street only gets richer. And speaking of getting older and watching our wealth evaporate under Powell's policies, you're getting older, I'm getting older, is unavoidable. While the Fed destroys our purchasing power, most of us face another challenge, joint pain. You've probably tried supplements or creams promising miracles, but let's be real, most don't work. And here's what most people don't get relief. They're using outdated formulas that don't address the root cause. Golden Revive Plus combines turmeric with black pepper extract for maximum absorption, plus boswellia and quercetin to target inflammation at the source. While we fight for sound money policy, don't let joint pain slow you down. Golden Revive Plus helps you stay active in this fight for America's financial future. Just like we need the right formula for Fed policy, you need the right formula for joint health. And you can find the link in the description down below. And here's what the establishment doesn't want you to know. Warsh isn't just pro-Bitcoin. He's anti-established. Caroline Leavitt is already blasting GOP senators who dare oppose Trump's pick. The White House is going to war for this nomination because they know that Warsh will restore credibility to an institution that's become Powell's personal political weapon. Markets are already reacting to the possibility of actual sound money policy returning to America. Trump nominating Kevin Warsh for Fed chair. Markets react. Questions about rate policy, central bank independence resurface. This is the initial market reaction, sets up the political battle, and there's already GOP resistance forming against the nomination. Leavitt blasting GOP senator for holding the economy hostage, vowing to oppose Kevin Warsh's nomination. Let's take a look. This is from Town Hall. Caroline Leavitt blasting Tom Tillis, a Republican from North Carolina, after he vowed to oppose the nomination of Kevin Warsh as Fed chair. Tillis said he would withhold his support until an investigation into Jerome Powell, the current Fed chair, is completed, arguing that political pressure on the central bank is unacceptable. He added that protecting the independence of the Fed from political interference or legal intimidation is non-negotiable. Interesting how Tillis is using President Trump's own investigation into Powell as leverage against holding up the nomination. Interesting play. The opposition gives perfect contest for the policy positions. He's targeting inflation as a tax on working Americans. Next Fed Chair Warsh warns that for 52% of Americans with no assets, inflation is the ultimate regressive tax. His mandate, shrink the $7 trillion balance sheet and get the central bank out of every banking market. Listen to this.
It hasn't been that big of a deal. We know it when we go to the grocery store, but we also own financial assets. Maybe we own some Bitcoin. 52% of our fellow Americans own no financial assets. They don't have equity in their house. They don't have an account at Schwab. They don't have an account at Coinbase. They're living off their W-2 income. And this surge in prices have destroyed them. Yeah. It's the most regressive tax any government could ever come up with. Imagine if we had a central bank that had been deadly focused on that. I think we wouldn't have taken a divided country and made it more divided. When we have a big balance sheet, we're asking for the inflation that came. And as a final point, my own judgment is the story that I hear from many of my peers. Well, the inflation, well, that's not really the central bank's fault. That's because of Putin and the pandemic. Nonsense. A change in prices happens in a market economy because of shocks in the world. Changes in prices happen every day. That's not what inflation is. Inflation is when that change in prices become embedded. It's second and third order effects. And that's what's been the biggest harm to the country. My recommendation is a smaller balance sheet, takes the Fed back to a more manageable size, a more serious job. And interestingly, if you can have a smaller balance sheet, you can have lower interest rates. Back to you.
How much smaller?
So when I joined, the Fed balance sheet was about $880 billion, included a bunch of foreign currencies. We do need some balance sheet to take to do our underlying business, to help run the treasuries, to help be a good counterparty to the rest of the central banks in the world. The economy's obviously grown since then. I wouldn't want to put a precise number on it, but right now the Fed balance sheet is about $7 trillion. They are participating in almost every banking market, almost every day. The world has come to rely on the central bank's massive imprimatur. I would say it is trillions larger than it needs to be. We can't make this change overnight. But if markets knew that our objective was to get to a balance sheet that was as riskless as possible and as small as possible, and we would get there in due time and with a strategy, I think markets and market participants could well adjust to it. The central bank could then be a powerful central bank, but a more limited one, and I would argue wouldn't find its way in harm's way politically or economically.
Wow. Downsizing the Federal Reserve. His populist economic message gets the official White House stamp of approval, but the real bombshell's coming from the crypto world. The White House says Kevin Warsh is the right choice for the Fed. The White House endorsement transitions to Michael Saylor dropping the Bitcoin angle. This could reshape monetary policy forever. Soon, Kevin Warsh will be the first pro-Bitcoin chairman of the Federal Reserve.
You made reference to Bitcoin, and I thought I heard a little bit of condescension that people are buying Bitcoin and these things.
But doesn't it, Charlie Munger, this is 2 or 3 years before he died, Charlie Munger attacked Bitcoin. He called it evil.
in part because it would begin to undermine the Fed's ability to manage the economy.
Or it could provide market discipline, or it could tell the world that things need to be fixed.
Bitcoin does not make you nervous.
Bitcoin does not make me nervous. I can hearken back to a dinner I had here in 2011 with someone who is another guest on your show. I won't say his name. Okay, I just did Mark Andreessen, who showed me the white paper. That was the original white paper. I wish I had understood as clearly as he did how transformative Bitcoin and this new technology would be. Bitcoin doesn't trouble me. I think of it as an important asset that can help inform policymakers when they're doing things right and wrong. It is not a substitute to the dollar. I think it can often be a very good policeman for policy. And if I were to speak more broadly to what did Charlie Munger and others perhaps have in mind, there is a proliferation of securities that go under all sorts of names. Many, if not most of them, are not worth what they might be being traded for. So what did Charlie say, and maybe his pal Warren say? There's the innovators, the imitators, and the incompetents. They're real innovators that are happening in and around that new technology. And what I would try to impart towards businesses and bankers is that the underlying technology that Mark showed me in that white paper, or tried to show me in that white paper, it's just software. It's just the newest, coolest software that will provide us an ability to do things that we could never have done before. Can the software be used for good and evil? Yes, both, like all software. Right. So I don't cast aspersions like that. If there's a final point, it's these technologies are being built here. I don't just mean on Stanford campus. I believe in the United States. And the world's most talented engineers from China and Europe and everywhere, they come to the United States even now to try to build this stuff. And my view is by building it here, that gives us an opportunity to be more productive and create something very special over the next decade.
Very special. I was just checking the Bitcoin prices to see how Bitcoin is reacting. And in the past day, it dipped. It's now at 75,000. It's down 13,000 from a week ago. And the 1 month high was $97,000, down 14,000 for the month. Interesting how the markets, at least Bitcoin market, not reacting to this news. But this does set up the confirmation battle. Here is Paluti on Fed Chair nominee Kevin Warsh.
He'll get confirmed, and I think it's a really good pick. I think President Trump knows exactly what he's doing in terms of interest rates, and we need, frankly, a Fed chair that isn't politicizing the Fed and can actually restore credibility to the institution. You know, Maria, Jay Powell has just totally turned this into a political football. These should be very straightforward questions. I mean, why should somebody be spending $4 billion on a building? So time can't come soon enough for Jay Powell to be gone, and I think it's a great pick, and frankly, we're looking forward to it in the housing market to have a new Fed chair.
Yeah, a lot of us are. For sure. The business endorsement builds momentum going into the Senate perspective. The bipartisan support could be forming. Senator McCormick on the Fed chair.
I know him. I worked with him. I was the Undersecretary of Treasury. He was on the Fed during the financial crisis. He did a superb job. But there's two things I'll say about him. Number one, he is uniquely equipped for this job and this moment. This is a guy who grew up rural New York. He has been wildly successful. He's made his own way. He knows every market maker. He knows every investor. He knows every policymaker in the world. He's been on Wall Street. He's been an investor, and he's been at the Fed. So number one, he's more equipped than anybody I could possibly think of. I think the president made a great choice. Second, he's got a reformer's heart, and we need reform. We have this ballooned balance sheet. We have the Fed that's now a major driver of fiscal policy. We have a world that's changing, and the models of the past aren't appropriate for the future. And so he's got such a strong case. I think he will get great support.
So this is the moment crypto advocates have dreamed of, a Federal Reserve chairman who understands that Bitcoin represents financial freedom and not a threat to government control. Powell turned monetary policy into a political football, but Warsh could return us to constitutional sound money principles that actually serve the American people instead of the Wall Street elites. You see, Kevin Warsh represents everything the deep state Fed fears: accountability, transparency, and respect for the Constitution. While Democrats and establishment Republicans panic about losing their money printing machine, Trump is delivering on his promise to drain the swamp. And Warsh knows inflation is destroying working families while enriching the connected class. He'll shrink that bloated balance sheet and stop the Fed from picking winners and losers in every market. Do you believe it's time to end the Federal Reserve's war on savers and restore sound money to America? Let me know in the comments. And while you're at it, check out the Next News merch shop to show your support for real financial reform. All right. A couple super chats came through. Thanks, guys. Thank you for always telling the truth. Rolls6955. We are Charlie Kirk indeed. And Barbara dropping $10. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you, Barbara. Sincerely appreciate that support. And that's it, folks. That's the show. And what we've witnessed today isn't just another news cycle. It's the systematic demolition of everything the establishment thought was untouchable. From the Clintons finally being dragged kicking and screaming into accountability, to precision military strikes eliminating terrorist threats, to revolutionary changes at the Federal Reserve. This is what happens when America First isn't just a campaign slogan, but an actual governing philosophy. The Clinton testimony represents 30 years of corruption finally meeting its reckoning. When a former president has to be threatened with contempt charges just to tell the truth about Jeffrey Epstein, you know the swamp runs deeper than anyone imagined. But here's what matters. They're finally going to answer questions under oath. No more deflection, no more lawyers playing word games, just sworn testimony about their connections to one of history's most notorious predators. Meanwhile, Trump is showing the world what competent leadership looks like. 14 ISIS operatives eliminated in Somalia with 0 civilian casualties. Not through endless occupation or nation building, but surgical precision that actually makes America safer. The data doesn't lie. We've conducted over 100 strikes dismantling terrorist networks that previous administrations allowed to flourish. And of course, that big stick from Minnesota all the way to Somalia. And the Cuba situation perfectly encapsulates Trump's strategic brilliance. A communist regime 90 miles from Florida is literally running out of oil. And instead of bailing them out unconditionally, Trump is leveraging their desperation to kick China, Russia, and Iran out of our hemisphere permanently. No more spy bases in our backyard. No more foreign intelligence operations threatening American families. The SAVE Act, the momentum there, proves Americans of every background want election integrity. When 76% of black Americans support voter ID requirements, the progressive narrative about discrimination completely collapses. Director Gabbard's whole-of-government approach is already showing results, and the Democrats know they can't defend opposition to common-sense verification measures. Kevin Warsh's Federal Reserve nomination might be the most revolutionary development. For the first time in generations, we'll have someone who understands that monetary policy shouldn't be a political weapon wielded against working families. His pro-Bitcoin stance represents more than cryptocurrency support. It's about breaking the stranglehold corrupt central bankers have held over American prosperity. Just like February 3rd, 1870, the 15th Amendment guaranteed voting rights regardless of race or color, we're witnessing another historic moment in election integrity. Trump is securing every American's sacred right to have their legal vote counted and protected from fraud. Exactly what those Republican legislators fought for over a century ago. The deep state worst nightmare has become their daily reality. Every corrupt system is being exposed, dismantled, and rebuilt according to constitutional principles. This is what draining the swamp actually looks like. So before we go, hit the shop. You'll see the little shelf right below this video. Grab some gear. Massive thanks to our super chatters and rumble ranters. You guys keep independent journalism alive. I'm Gary Franchi. This has been the Raw Feed. Stay free.